Good evening, everybody, and welcome again to Covenant's Monday evening conversations, reflection on the rock, we call it. We've been continuing our series of conversations with people who are connected in some way with Covenant, or people who otherwise have a very active spiritual life and have something to say to us, I think. Tonight, we welcome Chris McGovern, who's a neighbour at Covenant and a member of the church, and has been, you've had some pretty interesting life experiences. But the one that became very aware of at one point in your life was that you were doing foster care. So tell us a little bit about that and how you came to that and how it has impacted you.
Well, people come to foster care in many different ways is something that I did find. Personally, I came to foster care because I had never married and I never had children, and I had wanted children in my life. I tried very hard to do that. I went through the adoption process, which is virtually the same as the foster care. It's a 10-week course that you have to take. I did that through Catholic Charities, and it did not work out for me. There were several people who were presented to me, but none who I felt were really a good fit. I continued my regular job, which was teaching school. I taught for 30 years.
What grade?
It was middle school, 6th, 7th, and 8th. And I taught music, classroom music. So it was a wonderful job and I enjoyed it tremendously. But I took early retirement. I retired at 60. I taught for 30 years and I retired at 60 for several reasons. But the biggest reason was because my mother was starting to need some more care. Had many more doctor's appointments. She's still with us. She's 94.
Wow.
But she needed care at that time. So I thought it would be a lot easier if I just retired. And that brought up the fact that I wasn't really ready to retire. I wanted to have another job. And I thought about, I had been thinking about foster care ever since the experience with adoption. So this time I went through the county. What you have to do is a 10-week course. And it's a very informative course. It teaches you a lot. And there are all different types of people who are with you in this course. There are single people like me and single men, couples. There's different races. It's very well-rounded. And the teachers are very good. This was through Monroe County. The 10-week course goes over every aspect of what it's like to have a foster child in your care. And after I took the course, my very first person was a young boy, 13 years old.
Wow.
Who
well, that's a tough age, but it's middle school, right?
Yes.
So you knew the.
And I wanted older children. That was one of the prerequisites for me. A lot of people want babies, and it's a way for them to grow their own families because it can often lead to adoption. But at that point, I just really wanted to do the fostering.
Yeah.
So, and I wanted a young person I could actually talk to.
Yeah.
I remember the first day Avery came to me. He was nervous. I tried to feed him a meal. That was always one of my big things, was that I felt I had to feed him. And he could hardly eat. He was quite upset. And so I decided to take him for a hike, a little walk in Ellison Park. That didn't go over very well. There was a lot of water down there, and he stepped on a small tree toad, and he felt he had severed its leg. So I told him, it's okay, they regenerate, which I don't know if it's true, but at least it got him moving back towards the car. Anyways, Avery stayed with me off and on for 5 years.
Wow.
And it was off and on because his father was able to do the things necessary with the court to get him back into his custody. So he went back into Dad's custody, but then they moved to Ontario. And Avery wanted to stay in the city schools. He was going to SOTA, and he was already in there for several years, and he really wanted to graduate from that. I told him, I will see you through this. And so he came to live with me again, but not under the foster care, because by that time I'd received a number of calls. I'd taken kids in on a temporary basis, but there's such a need, and there were so many calls, and I just felt like at this point I have to tell them that I have found my person and I've committed to that young man, and that was what I was planning on doing.
It's so hard to say enough, isn't it? It's hard to say no to those calls.
Yeah.
When you have a big heart.
So Avery was with me through the pandemic.
And he was able to graduate then from SOTA.
He just graduated last June. Wow. And then he went back with his father, but unfortunately the family went through another crisis situation. And at that point, he called me. And I said to him, let me talk to your dad. I'm coming to get you. And I went out and I got him, and he came and stayed for another 1.5 years with me. Wow. And at that point, he graduated. And I said, well, I think our time might be up. But that was such a difficult period. I really loved Avery. I tried my best. I'm not sure what kind of a parent I was. I think I acted a lot like my own mother.
Don't we all?
and the inexperience really showed, I think. But I think he knew that I cared. We did a lot of fun things together. We traveled a lot because I love to travel. And I gave him some good experiences. But I was feeling like our time was really over, that he needed to learn from somebody else, that I was not the person that could teach him. And I suffered quite a bit. I finally called up Pastor Ann, and we took a walk around the block. And at the end, we ended up in the church parking lot, and she said a prayer for me. And it was, help me to just be able to give him up if that is what is best for him.
Wow.
And it took a while. It took a couple months more before I could actually say,
so it wasn't a magic answer to that prayer then, but it came.
Right.
It came.
Right.
Yeah.
And then finally he found some friends. They've got a house in the city, and 4 people are together renting it out. And he's working, he's saving up his money, and he wants to go to a welding school.
Wow.
So he has a plan, and I think he's being growing up. I think he's growing up with this experience.
Oh, that's wonderful. And is there a welding school in Rochester?
Yes, it's out in Gates.
Oh, wonderful.
But it's run through MCC.
Wonderful.
So he's planning on doing that.
Oh, wow.
And I miss him, but there's other things I don't miss about him.
Right, so, of course.
It's kind of nice.
Of course. Yeah, that's family life for you. I feel the same way about our kids. Oh, and how has, you said about Pastor Ann walking around with you in the prayer, how did that help in the sense of having a faith base to get through the difficult times?
I was kind of surprised when she said that. I thought, really, is that the route that I've said that I wanted to take? And I thought it was very insightful, but she is often very insightful.
Yes, she
so
is.
I had a lot to think about.
Yeah.
And as it trickled through, it became evident that yes, that's the way it had to be.
Yeah, isn't it funny how some things we can decide like that, and other things it takes God a while to work it through us. We need to take our time. We need to. I had a friend who shared last week with me about something she'd read about God's speed is about 3 miles an hour, because that's the way Jesus walked, like we all do walk about 3 miles an hour or whatever it is. And I love that image. It's continually coming to me that so much stuff that you think you've worked out is still working on you.
Right.
Yeah, and it's sometimes wonderful to have somebody who's got that insight that says, maybe this is the issue.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Thank you, Chris. This is just, oh wow.
I just
What
like
a
to
life
encourage
change.
anyone who's thinking about children to consider foster care, because it's such a needed situation in our county.
Oh,
There's
yes.
tons of kids that need help.
Right, so
And
Monroe County.
Yes, it can be very difficult.
Yes.
It's
And painful.
not an easy job, but not having been a parent before, I can only say that I gained a great new respect for parents.
Parenting is hard. Yeah. However the child comes to us.
Right.
Yeah. And we have 2 children. We adopted them, and I know people who have their own children, and I know my own parents had very mixed feelings at times about their kids. However they come to you, Great, thank you for your offering to the city and to the welfare of our common good, and thank you for what you do at church, and thank you for sharing this, because there are so many things that strike me from that story about the spiritual life and how we have to persist and rely on others, and thanks, Chris. All right, folks, we'll see you next Monday for another conversation, and join us on Wednesday and Friday for some evening prayer.